Silence. In the desert, which seems lifeless and silent, there is no sound other than the gentle whisper of the wind sweeping across the sands. This wind seems to carry the echo of bygone eras, blowing through the ages, and it only falls silent here, in a place where time appears to stand still. Yet even in this silence, even in this stillness, there is something special. 185 kilometers northeast of the famous pyramids of Giza, in a vast area where, seemingly, there is no life or movement, lies a place called Tanis. Its ancient name was Janet, and in the Bible, it is known as Muon. Today it is a field strewn with scorched ruins and broken statues, standing in silence and oblivion. When explorers first arrived here in the 19th century, they encountered a scene that could have been straight out of an apocalypse. Massive statues carved from granite, each weighing tens of tons, were not merely toppled. They had been transformed into something else, something that could be called burned and sealed in a glassy crust. Their surfaces were covered with a layer of molten stone, as if these giants had gazed into the very heart of a blazing blast furnace. Large stone pillars resembling the trunks of ancient trees were shattered to their bases, scattered across the field like toys of an angry god. A question lingered in the air, one that remained unanswered for a long time. How could such a temperature have been reached, capable of melting granite? And what could have caused such force? After all, the temperature needed to melt granite exceeds 1200 degrees Celsius, and no ordinary fire, even the strongest and most furious, can reach such heights. This was not just a tragedy, it was a testament to the use of power, technologies that at the time seemed impossible. The official version states that the city once here was abandoned and fell into decline. But the treasures left behind and the traces of such high temperatures, which left marks of melting on the stones, tell a completely different story. They speak of a sudden and catastrophic destruction of this place, rather than gradual abandonment. And this mystery is just one of many threads in a complex tangle of secrets woven throughout human history. Mysteries that make us wonder, do we truly know the truth about our past? Perhaps the most majestic monuments of antiquity do not mark the beginning of our civilization, but its end. Maybe they are the last surviving relics of a world we have long forgotten. This is not just a story about the past, it is an attempt to decipher the impossible. And it all begins right here, among the melted stones of Tanis, with a question that could change everything. What really happened in the ancient world? Before we move on to the main facts and theories, I would like to ask for a small favor. Your attention and support are what help continue the research and the search for answers. Your support is understanding and gratitude for the work done. Thank you. To find the truth, one must go to the place where the very idea of eternity is embodied in stone. A place that has become a symbol of Egypt and its ancient culture, the Giza Plateau. This place is so famous that its name has become synonymous with the entire country. Millions of people come here every year to see the majestic pyramid with their own eyes. They feel its scale, its power, and the secrets it holds. We look at it and think we know its history well. We are told that this pyramid is the tomb of a 4th dynasty pharaoh named Khufu, built about 4,500 years ago. We hear that it was constructed by tens of thousands of workers using copper tools and wooden sledges. We accept this story because it seems logical and convenient. The Great Pyramid is truly a unique engineering marvel that continues to amaze people's imaginations to this day. It is not just stone walls or a monument built many thousands of years ago. It is a real wonder of ancient technology that evokes admiration and wonder among modern engineers and scientists. The construction of this pyramid is the result of incredible effort and skill of ancient craftsmen, whose art and knowledge seemingly surpassed everything we can imagine even today. About 2,300,000 stone blocks were used in its construction, each weighing from 2.5 to 15 tons. These massive blocks were carefully fitted together with such precision that it is impossible to insert even a thin knife or needle between them. Such mastery in stone processing and placement seems almost impossible for people living in those distant times. Moreover, the 4 sides of the pyramid are aligned almost perfectly with the cardinal points, with an error of only 3.6 of a degree. This indicates that the ancient builders possessed astonishing knowledge of astronomy and navigation. Most likely, the errors in orientation are not due to construction mistakes, but to the movement of Earth's plates over the centuries, which occurred after the structure was completed. And this is just the beginning of the astonishing facts about the Great Pyramid. Inside this giant stone monument, a complex labyrinth of corridors, chambers, and rooms is hidden, the purpose of which continues to spark heated debates among scientists and researchers. Official science claims that it is the tomb of the pharaoh, intended for his burial and the storage of his treasures. However, there is one very strange detail that casts doubt on this version. Inside the pyramid, no mummy or remains of the pharaoh have ever been found. In the very chamber considered to be the royal one, there is no sarcophagus or mummy. Moreover, the sarcophagus that was there turned out to be too large to be carried through the narrow passages leading inside the pyramid. It was installed during the construction, but why and how is it so roughly carved, given that the walls of the chamber are executed with precision comparable to laser processing? All of this makes one wonder, could this structure be something other than just a tomb? Perhaps it is something greater, beyond ordinary understanding. Some researchers are beginning to ask heretical questions. What if the ancient Egyptians did not build this pyramid at all? What if they found it and decided to use it for their purposes? What if this ancient and mysterious mechanism was discovered by them and became a sacred site, a holy symbol of power and authority? This idea seems almost blasphemous. It challenges established notions about the history and origin of the pyramid. But the deeper we delve into the mysteries of the Giza Plateau, the more evidence we find supporting this incredible hypothesis. Our investigation does not start from the top of the pyramid, nor from its upper parts, but from its foundation and even deeper, from the depths of the earth beneath its base. For many decades, the main focus was on the Great Pyramid itself, its exterior and internal structure. The other two famous monuments, the pyramids of Khafre and Menkaure, as well as dozens of smaller structures, remained in the shadow. Archaeologists conducted excavations, but often limited themselves to surface studies. No one even thought to fully clear and explore the foundations of all these constructions. It may seem absurd, but it is a fact. Beneath layers of sand and accumulated deposits over millennia, the most astonishing and unexpected discoveries could be hidden. And not only beneath the sand, the Giza Plateau itself is not just a rocky massif rising above the surrounding plain. It is a complex labyrinth of tunnels, shafts, and caves carved into the rock like a giant Swiss cheese. This underground world is a whole network that official science prefers not to discuss. Why would any of the ancient builders or researchers exert such incredible effort to create these mysterious structures deep underground? Why are such secrets concealed within their constructions? And why was it necessary to carve them into the Earth's depths? The official version, as always, is very simple and concise. These underground structures served as tombs. However, in reality, it is much more complicated. No bodies or clear funerary inscriptions confirming their purpose have been found in these stone boxes. Instead, we face empty, silent sarcophagi, with the feeling that these structures were created long before the era of the pharaohs. These mysterious underground complexes challenge conventional chronology, prompting us to reconsider the timing of their appearance. The walls and interiors of these monumental structures show signs of water erosion, which clearly could not have formed over a short period. These traces are especially noticeable on the stone sphinxes and on the walls of the surrounding pits. These features indicate that these structures are much older than commonly believed. Some geologists, such as the scientist Robert Schoch, argue that such erosion could only have developed after prolonged exposure to heavy rains. As is well known, such intense rainfall in Egypt was recorded at least 7,000 years ago. Therefore, the age of these constructions could be significantly older than we think, dating back to a period about which we know very little. What if the Giza Plateau was not just a burial site, but served a much more significant purpose? Perhaps it was an administrative center or an entire technological complex where surface and underground parts were closely interconnected, forming a unified whole. This idea may seem fantastic or even incredible, but it is worth examining all the facts carefully to understand how well-founded it is. For thousands of years, the Great Pyramid stood motionless and impregnable, as if guarding its secrets. Its original smooth white limestone casing, which shone brightly in the sun and created an impression of timelessness, had no visible entrance. All passages and entrances were carefully sealed inside, making it almost impossible to get inside. The first person to break its silence was the famous Baghdad Caliph al-Ma'mun. In the 8th century AD, inspired by legends of treasures and secret knowledge hidden within the pyramid, he ordered his workers to dig a tunnel. These workers labored for weeks, blindly breaking the stone, unaware of what lay ahead. According to legend, one day they heard a sound, like a stone falling somewhere in the distance, and changing direction, managed to break into the descending corridor. But the most astonishing events began later. They didn't just enter inside, they broke through the protective system. Al-Ma'mun and his men found the original entrance, located about 17 meters up on the northern wall of the pyramid. From there, the descending corridor angled approximately 26 degrees downward into the rocky foundation. It stretched for about 105 meters and ended in a roughly carved, unfinished chamber called the pit. The purpose of this chamber remains a mystery. Perhaps it was the original burial chamber design, which was later abandoned or modified. But the most remarkable discovery was not at the bottom, but roughly halfway along the descending corridor. If you look closely, you can notice a granite slab in the ceiling, serving as a cap. Behind this slab, another corridor begins, an ascending one. When Al-Ma'mun's men tried to move the granite slabs, they encountered difficulties because the slabs were very heavy. They simply drilled through the softer limestone to reach the interior of the structure. In this way, they uncovered something that could be called Pandora's box, a hidden secret. Part 5 of 14. A staircase ascends along the walls of the ancient pyramid, and within its bounds, 27 pairs of narrow slots have been carved. The question arises, what were these unusual recesses intended for? The official version states that they served to move heavy granite blocks used to seal the ascending passage after the burial of the pharaoh. However, this theory is questionable, as the system itself seems too complex and overly intricate for such a seemingly simple task. Some researchers, including an engineer named Christopher Dan, proposed a bolder hypothesis. He suggested that these slots might have served a completely different purpose. Perhaps they were used to install special resonators or other technological equipment. The acoustic properties of this large gallery are unique. Sounds generated here resonate and amplify, creating extraordinary acoustic effects. What if the entire system was not designed for burial purposes but served as something else? A giant machine, an energy device, as some suggest, or a communication apparatus? At the end of the long gallery is a horizontal passage leading directly into the heart of the pyramid, the king's chamber. But before reaching it, one should notice a less conspicuous corridor branching off from the beginning of this gallery. It leads to the so-called queen's chamber, a small room with a gabled ceiling, completely empty inside. The walls of this chamber contain two narrow shafts, which for a long time were thought to be ventilation openings. However, in 1993, a miniature robot named UPA-2 made a truly shocking discovery. It turned out that these shafts lead nowhere and are not used for ventilation. They end with stone doors with copper handles and, surprisingly, do not open to any passage. In 2002, one of these doors was drilled, revealing an empty chamber behind it, which, as it turned out, led to another third barrier. What is hidden behind these sealed doors? Why did the builders create such a complex system of locked shafts leading nowhere? Returning to the main gallery, we proceed to its very end. There, a narrow passage forces you to bend almost in three before you can straighten up in the spacious king's chamber. The sensation here is entirely different. The walls and floor are completely covered with massive slabs of red Aswan granite. The ceiling is flat and consists of 9 monolithic granite beams, each weighing about 50 tons. In the very center of this room stands a mighty sarcophagus carved from a single piece of granite. It is simple in shape, devoid of decorations, and only has a smooth surface. The lid is missing, and as mentioned earlier, it is empty inside. However, the most astonishing thing is not what is inside the chamber, but what is located directly above it. Above the ceiling of the king's chamber, 5 low cavities are hidden, called relief chambers. These small hollows are separated by massive granite slabs, and are designed to relieve the enormous weight of the overlying structure. It was in these concealed, seldom visited rooms that the only inscriptions containing the name of Khufu, the famous pharaoh of the Old Kingdom era, were found. These inscriptions became the main argument for supporters of the official version, claiming that the pyramid contains his burial remains. But even here there are difficulties. The inscriptions are executed in crude red paint, contain orthographic errors, and look as if they were scratched by workers lacking particular skill. Some researchers, including Zachariah Sitchin, have expressed the opinion that these inscriptions are a forgery, made in the 19th century by the discoverers of these chambers to support their theories and justify their findings. This hypothesis is controversial. However, it demonstrates how fragile the evidence is upon which the entire official story of the pyramid is built. Years passed, and the debates about the origin and purpose of the Great Pyramid of Giza continued for a long time. Although many opinions and hypotheses accumulated during this period, no new confirmations or convincing facts emerged. Everything changed only in 2015 when an international project called Scan Pyramid was launched. At that moment, scientists from various countries, including specialists from Egypt, France, Canada, and Japan, decided to look inside this magnificent structure without destroying or displacing a single stone. They employed the most advanced and innovative non-invasive research methods designed to study the internal structure of ancient monuments without damaging them. Among these methods were infrared thermography, 3D modeling, and, most importantly, muon radiography. The latter technique, based on the use of muons, elementary particles generated in the upper atmosphere when cosmic rays collide with air atoms, became the key to the mystery. These particles rain down on the Earth, forming a kind of shower, and can penetrate hundreds of meters of stone. By detecting the flux of muons passing through the pyramid structure, scientists were able to create an accurate map of its internal density and voids. Areas with higher muon counts indicated empty spaces or cavities, while regions with fewer muons corresponded to dense stone layers. The results of this research were published in 2017 and caused a sensation. The most sensational discovery was the detection of a large, previously unknown cavity inside the Grand Gallery, at its very heart, which experts named the Great Void. The size of this cavity was at least 30 meters in length, and its cross-section was comparable to that of the largest gallery within the pyramid. The discovery confirmed her existence. She is indeed there, real, and now a new mysterious object was revealed to scientists. But what exactly is it? What purpose could it have served? Egyptologists, rushing to draw conclusions, suggested that it might be another relieving chamber or an internal ramp used during the construction of the pyramid. However, its location and size did not quite fit these theories. It appeared isolated, as if deliberately hidden, as if it had been created specifically to be concealed from view. The discovery of this great void became the pivotal moment that changed the understanding of the Great Pyramid. It proved that our knowledge about it is still far from complete and that we only know half the truth. This discovery opened the way for the boldest and most daring hypotheses. What if this void is not just a simple structural element? What if it hides something much more significant, the key to understanding the true purpose of this ancient structure? What if there is a real chamber inside, containing unique artifacts or information capable of overturning our perceptions of ancient history? These thoughts inspired a new level of investigation. Now, the focus was not just on interpreting old finds, but on a genuine race to peer into this mysterious and enigmatic interior world. Every new study became another step towards solving the puzzle, and the Great Pyramid itself seemed to start speaking again, posing new riddles and secrets before humanity. The mystery of the Great Pyramid does not exist in a vacuum. It is only the tip of a massive iceberg. Around it, on the Giza Plateau and throughout Egypt, numerous artifacts are scattered that also contradict the official history and raise many questions. For example, in 1954, archaeologist Kamal El-Mala discovered two sealed pits at the southern foot of the pyramid. Inside, disassembled, were two full-size boats made from Lebanese cedar. One of them, called the Solar Boat, was carefully reconstructed and is now displayed in a museum. Another find that raises many questions and baffles scientists is the so-called tombs of the pyramid builders, discovered in the 1990s. These ancient burials contained remains of people traditionally believed to be workers involved in building the Great Pyramids. Detailed analysis of the skeletons showed that these individuals had access to good nutrition and medical care, completely contradicting the widespread myth that they worked under slavery and harsh conditions, receiving only minimal resources. But a question arises. Do these remains truly belong to those who erected these magnificent structures? Or perhaps they are of those who later restored or maintained them, or of people who lived here many centuries after the construction was completed. Inscribed texts found in tombs date back to the era of the pharaohs, meaning they belong to a period when these great kingdoms and their rulers already existed. However, this does not prove that these individuals were the creators of the megalithic complex. It is possible that they built their modest clay tombs near already existing ancient and sacred structures left behind by more ancient civilizations. In other words, the presence of inscriptions and burials in these locations does not necessarily indicate that these people built the pyramids themselves. It is quite possible that they appeared much later, during a time when the pyramids had long been completed, and these sites became places of their burials or ritual ceremonies. But perhaps the most striking and astonishing discovery that challenged many notions about ancient technologies was the so-called Saqqara find, the so-called Saqqara disk. This unusual artifact was discovered in the tomb of a person named Sabu, dating back to the first dynasty of Egypt, approximately 5,000 years ago. It is made of a special stone resembling alabaster and is shaped very much like a three-bladed propeller or a steering wheel with a central hub and curved edges. Its purpose remains a mystery to this day. The official version states that it was a tray for flowers or a ritual vessel, but the shape of this object is too complex and aerodynamic to serve such utilitarian purposes. It looks more like part of a mechanism, some device that would have seemed impossible at that time. After all, in those days, the idea of such mechanisms did not even cross people's minds. They lacked the technology to create such complex and precise parts. This disc appears to be a component of some mechanism that simply could not have existed in that era. Among the finds are boats, tombs, mysterious discs, and numerous stone vases carved from the hardest types of stone with incredible precision. All these artifacts tell the same astonishing story, a story of a technological gap. We see primitive tools and implements made from basic materials alongside artifacts that require machine processing, complex technologies, and tools for their creation. This creates the impression that two different civilizations coexisted side by side, or more likely, one civilization came to the ruins of another to try to copy, imitate, and utilize what was left by its predecessors. These discoveries, boats, tombs, mysterious discs, and stone vases, all testify to the existence of some ancient technologies that, at first glance, seem incompatible with the level of development of those times. The discovery of the so-called Great Void and the analysis of anomalous artifacts demand a reconsideration of conventional views on history. The modern linear model of progress, from cave dwellers to contemporary civilizations, is beginning to crack. Scientific evidence points to a more complex and layered picture. It is possible that human history developed in a cyclical pattern. In such a scenario, great civilizations arose, reached incredible heights with unique technologies, and then disappeared. Across North America and Europe, a thin layer of matte black substance is found, consisting of carbon-rich deposits that cover the Earth's surface in a very thin layer. This layer is saturated with tiny particles, including nanodiamonds, microspherules, and iridium. All these findings are undeniable. They serve as convincing evidence that our world was struck by a comet or fragments of a cosmic body. One can imagine what this world was like before the catastrophic event that changed everything. Perhaps it was a true golden age, an era of prosperity and the highest civilization, the legendary Atlantis. This civilization might have possessed extraordinary knowledge in astronomy, engineering, and possibly even physics, of which we are only beginning to suspect. Highly advanced structures, such as the pyramids of Giza, with their precise mathematical calculations and astronomical alignment, could have been more than just tombs. They might have served as survival devices, shelters, observatories, or energy sources. We cannot say for sure yet, but their construction, capable of withstanding virtually any disaster, speaks for itself. These structures were created by minds far surpassing our current understanding. Then, a powerful and sudden impact occurs. Massive ice masses covering the northern territories of North America instantly begin to melt under the catastrophe's influence. Billions of tons of water rush into the ocean, causing gigantic tsunamis on a scale comparable to biblical descriptions. The level of the world's oceans rises by hundreds of meters, flooding coastal cities worldwide and turning them into distant reefs and ruins. Dust and soot, lifted by large-scale fires, block sunlight, causing a sharp cooling and the onset of an ice age. The civilization existing at that time is thrown back into the Stone Age. Survivors lose most of their knowledge and technology, retaining only fragments of information that over time turn into myths and legends. Myths of a great flood are present in most cultures around the world, evidence that such catastrophes occurred repeatedly. There are also legends of gods descending from the heavens and bestowing knowledge upon humans. What if all this is not just fairy tales, but distorted memories of real events? What if the Epic of Gilgamesh is not merely a myth, but a coded account of actual historical events? Gilgamesh, the king of ancient Uruk, who ruled around 2700 BCE, after the death of his friend Enkidu, embarks on a quest for immortality. In legends, he searches for Utnapishtim, the man who survived the Great Flood. Many believe this was merely a myth connected to the biblical story of Noah. But what if these tales are not just inventions, but distorted memories of real events? Perhaps Gilgamesh was seeking not just immortality in a mystical sense, but access to the lost knowledge and technologies of ancient civilizations, capable of prolonging life or protecting against new cataclysms. In this light, even the most controversial theories, such as Zecharia Sitchin's and the Sitchin hypothesis, begin to look different. Sitchin, based on his interpretations of Sumerian cuneiform texts, claimed that there is another 12th planet in our solar system. He called it Barrow and believed it has an elongated orbit completing a revolution around the sun every 3,600 years. According to him, the inhabitants of this planet, the Anunnaki, visited Earth in ancient times, created humans through genetic engineering, and passed on knowledge. However, the scientific community rejects Sitchin's theory, considering it pseudoscience. There is no astronomical evidence supporting the existence of such a planet. The Anunnaki are not extraterrestrials, as some modern fantasies suggest, but primarily representatives of an ancient, highly advanced Earth civilization that existed long before the emergence of modern peoples. These beings were so advanced and powerful that they were worshipped as gods in antiquity. Many myths and legends that have come down to us may be based on real events and facts, and this perspective helps to unify scientific knowledge and mythological stories into a coherent picture. Considering this hypothesis, one can understand that it does not require belief in extraterrestrial visitors from space, but allows for the possibility that ancient texts and legends, despite distortions, have preserved a kernel of truth. These ancient descriptions tell us about cycles of time, recurring epics, and suggest that human history is not a simple linear development, but a spiral, with rises and falls occurring over millennia. From this point of view, great pyramids, temples, and megaliths cease to be merely monuments or tombs. They become witnesses of past ages, beacons that can tell us about ancient catastrophes, such as floods, and civilizations that possess knowledge of cosmic cycles far greater than ours today. Perhaps these monuments are encrypted warnings left for future generations. Human history is not only about grand megaliths and global catastrophes, but also about the destinies of individual people, whose lives and deeds became legends. One such legend, shrouded in mystery and enigma for 2,000 years, is the story of Egypt's last queen, Cleopatra. This woman lived a life full of drama and contradictions. She was not only a ruler, but also a woman whose fate was intertwined with the great events of her time. Her life contained everything: love, power, betrayal, and a tragic death. However, after Cleopatra's death in 30 BC, her story seemed to come to an abrupt end. We do not know where she was buried. Following the Roman conquest of Egypt, it is quite likely that their goal was to destroy her tomb to erase any memory of her. Nevertheless, there is one important detail. Her beloved Mark Antony was buried beside her. This fact suggests that their final refuge must have been hidden and carefully guarded to keep it secret. For many centuries, treasure hunters and archaeologists have tried to find her tomb in the city of Alexandria, but all searches were unsuccessful. The city was repeatedly destroyed, suffered from severe earthquakes, and even sank beneath the water. It seemed that the secret was lost forever. However, in the early 21st century, an unexpected participant entered the scene. Not an archaeologist, but a lawyer from the Dominican Republic named Kathleen Martinez. She had been fascinated by Cleopatra's history since childhood, but not the Hollywood legend, rather the real woman, intelligent, educated, fluent in 9 languages. A brilliant politician who nearly created a new Hellenistic empire. Martinez was convinced that Cleopatra, who considered herself the embodiment of the goddess Isis, would never have allowed her tomb to be left in the noisy Alexandria. She believed it had to be located in a sacred place, a temple dedicated to Ibis, the deity the queen herself worshipped. After examining numerous ancient texts, she came across a mention of the Temple of Tapirus Magna, located about 50 kilometers west of Alexandria. This was a bold hypothesis that went against conventional views. In 2005, having sold all her possessions, Martinez traveled to Egypt and managed to persuade the authorities. The search within this complex has been ongoing for several years. To this day, there is no definitive answer as to whether the tomb has been found. For now, everything remains in the realm of assumptions and guesses. But one day, one of the leading researchers, a renowned archaeologist and expert on ancient civilizations named Kathleen Martinez, confidently declared that she was on the very verge of one of the greatest discoveries in the history of archaeology. Her story is a vivid example of how one person, obsessed with an idea, can change the course of events and make the entire world look at long-solved mysteries of the past in a new light. Sometimes history throws up puzzles where they are least expected, and such discoveries force us to reevaluate our knowledge and perceptions of ancient civilizations. In July 2018, in the city of Alexandria, something extraordinary happened during construction work. An excavator's bucket struck something firmly embedded in the ground. It turned out to be a giant sarcophagus made of black granite, about 2 meters high and approximately 33 meters long. Its surface was perfectly smooth, without a single scratch or sign of damage. What was especially intriguing was that the joint between the lid and the base was sealed with a layer of mortar that had not cracked or deteriorated over more than 2,000 years. No one had opened this sarcophagus all these centuries. News of the find quickly spread worldwide. What could be hidden inside? Perhaps this sarcophagus contained the long-lost tomb of the great Alexander the Great, or another noble ruler or dignitary from the Ptolemaic era. Nearby, an alabaster head, worn down by time and the elements, was found. Its features had been erased beyond recognition, making it look more like a mysterious artifact than a human face. While scientists were formulating theories and assumptions, rumors and legends began to circulate among the people and on the internet. There were stories about a curse supposedly guarding this sarcophagus. People warned that opening it could bring misfortune to the entire world. Tales of the curse of Tutankhamun's tomb, which was believed to bring calamities to those who tried to open it, were recalled. The Egyptian authorities tried to reassure the public, claiming there was no danger, and urged people not to panic. But the tension was growing, and people watched the unfolding events with anxiety. The long-awaited D-Day arrived. Live on air, under the watchful eyes of dozens of cameras and with experienced engineers present, everything necessary for opening the sarcophagus was prepared. Cables were secured to the massive granite lid, and the operation began. The crane slowly and carefully lifted the heavy slab, which weighed about 15 tons. At first, it moved only a millimeter, then a little more. When a gap appeared, a disgusting, suffocating stench of decay suddenly burst forth from inside. This scent had been concentrated for many centuries, sealed inside a hermetic container. The story of the black sarcophagus is essentially an astonishing and multifaceted metaphor for the entire field of archaeology and its remarkable discoveries. This image seems to embody the anticipation of great finds, rich treasures, and secret knowledge hidden for centuries beneath layers of dust and time. But as practice shows, most archaeological excavations do not lead to what we hope to find, but rather to much simpler, yet sometimes no less valuable discoveries. People, their bones, the stories they left behind, and small golden amulets that may have been intended for protection or luck, left in the hope of eternity. And it is these kinds of finds that may be more precious than gold, because they contain a piece of the human soul, hope and dreams, small treasures hidden deep within ancient civilizations. Beginning our journey among the melted ruins of Tanis, a city that once prospered, we gradually moved further, expanding our horizons of knowledge and understanding. As we concluded, we looked into a flooded sarcophagus in distant and mysterious Alexandria, which allowed us to delve into the depths of a history that seems to have vanished beneath the waters of time. Then we walked through the corridors of the Great Pyramid, one of the most astonishing and enigmatic monuments of antiquity, and peering into its hidden voids, we asked ourselves, what if this pyramid was built not by the people we were told, and not for the purposes they claim? Our research led us to the understanding that geological and climate data point to a global catastrophe that could have wiped out an entire era of human history, erasing it from the face of the earth. This catastrophe left behind only myths about a great flood, gods, and mighty battles fought in the heavens. As a result, we obtained a new, more complex, and sometimes frightening picture of the past, which both captivates and disturbs. This image destroys our familiar foundations, forcing us to reconsider everything we knew about antiquity. Yet there is a certain beauty in this, as it offers the possibility to understand that humanity might be a species with amnesia, a civilization building its future on the ruins of long-forgotten, more ancient, and possibly wiser worlds. Many questions remain unanswered. What really happened in Tanis? What force is capable of melting granite, the material that seemed impervious? What lies beyond the great void inside the pyramid? And will we ever dare to look into these unexplored depths? Were our ancient ancestors witnesses or even victims of cosmic cataclysms? Perhaps the memory of such events has reached us in the form of myths about the sky, the heavens, celestial battles, and divine clashes. And an equally important question is whether researcher Kathleen Martinez will find the tomb of Cleopatra, the last ruler of the ancient world who teetered on the brink of oblivion and disappearance. We cannot provide definitive answers to these questions, but the very existence of these mysteries changes our perception of history and its meaning. It compels us to see ancient stones not merely as static monuments, but as encrypted messages hiding important truths. Perhaps the greatest secret of history lies not in the knowledge yet to be uncovered, but in what we have learned to overlook, what has always been right in front of us. History is not just a frozen text in a textbook or an ancient document to be read and forgotten. It is an ongoing investigation involving all of us. Each of us can become part of this great quest, deciphering the riddles of the past and uncovering new secrets. What do you think about this? What other mysteries of antiquity make you question the official version of history? What questions remain in your mind, and what would you like to learn about humanity's past?